Look at us. Look at us. Where is it? Oh, what a beauty. What a beauty. I'm sure I'm gonna beat soon, so don't worry. But yeah, I'll explain how these work, right? First of all, I'll explain the regular strategy of how to do seal super fast, like 30 to 40 second speedruns, because they're super simple, they're super safe, there's literally no danger, you don't even have to dodge a lot of attacks. So yeah, I'll explain that, and for those who are interested in speedrunning, I'll give you some min-max strategies so you could achieve those higher scores and potentially even beat my score through it, right? So I will say one thing. In most cases, this will only work for something like a Cleave or Solera. At least it will be the most, I don't know, most efficient, I guess you can say. For other summons, it might be a bit less, because only Solera and Cleave have the damage dealt up above from their Wind skill 3, right? Other units do not have that, and the only free-to-play unit that you can get it from is the Wind Chimera. So if you're something like Akina, maybe instead of attack buff from Bastet, you can start using the Wind Chimera for the damage up, since you do have attack up from your fire skill, right? So from this, you could potentially be getting the damage dealt up buff. I mean, you can try to improvise. I'll just explain how I did it, right? So first of all, for runes, these are the runes that I use. So for Brandia, this is the set. I have my Brandia on a very high crit damage build, so once she eats the crit damage food, let me just showcase, right? Once she eats the crit damage food, you don't really need the crit damage since it already caps at 400, right? I think I just have to, yeah, I have to use the wind weapon. So she caps at 400, mine is a little bit lower crit damage. You can go for a higher critical raid build, I guess, or something like this, so to make sure that she crits, right? But yeah, the only thing you need to know about Brandia is, because there is a massive attack boost in the dungeon, don't worry too much about attack. The main thing you need is high crit damage, as close to 400 as possible. If you're not able to get it with runes, try to maybe add Windy into there, right? If you're like somewhere around 320 mark. If not, just try to stack crit damage as high as possible. Second super important thing, the run does not work without this. Weakness exploit artifact, it's a must. That's where main damage comes from, because without that artifact your damage will be like 60-70% lower than with it, right? For other units, you will need an ultimate charge. I use Tiana, I don't have Eleonora, I don't have a water fade with her artifact, so I use Tiana. She works just fine, right? You'll also want attack buff. As a cleave, I don't have a summoner attack buff, so I use Bastet, and I'll explain why I use Bastet. When we go to the speedrunning strat, you can use any other attack buff, it doesn't have to be Bastet. And if you want to speed up your runs even more, you also want some unit that gives movement speed. So for me, that's Remy. You can also use something like the Wind Griffon, something like the Dark Fox if you manage to have her. I do have her, but I found that the blue Har works way better than her movement speed. So yeah, let me just explain how the dungeon works, right? I'll jump into a run and I'll just give you sort of like, I don't know how to say, like step-by-step guide, right? I will not go for high score right now, I'll just explain what I do, right? So for the beginning, what I do is just buff up the movement speed and then swap to Tiana. The main goal of this is to not kill with what's it called, Brandia's damage, but to kill with ultimates instead, right? So you will want to charge your ultimate with either 3 to 4 ultimate charges, and at that point you want to crit. I forgot to do my third skill for the damage up, but as you can see, that ult alone, without even the damage buff, it did like what, 37% of his HP, right? So one more ultimate. I am not gonna ult right now because I don't have a dot. Make sure to have a dot before you ult, right? So I'm not gonna ult right now. I'll wait for my dot to come back up. I pop the dot and no damage up, but that's enough damage to kill it, right? So yeah, very simple. Charge up your ult, make sure you have attack buff, damage dealt up, make sure you have the dot, ult with Brandia. Super simple, super safe. Most of the attacks that they do will not even do any damage to you. It will mostly do knockback, especially if you use Bastet, because her shield will be so massive that you simply won't take damage, right? And in most cases, for example, as a cleave, you actually want to get hit by skill because you'll get extra mana from it. There is a passive that cleave has for a little bit of extra mana. I believe it is this one, if I'm not wrong. Yeah, when attacked by a boss, 10% chance to increase mana by 1, so you can even get more mana and faster runs that way. So yeah, now I'll explain the speed running strategy and some ways on how you can maximize it even more. And keep in mind, for some of the tips I will speak from a cleave summoner's perspective, but it's pretty much similar for all other summoners, right? So first of all, let's start with Bastet and why I chose Bastet. And unlike any other attack buffer, she has a small passive that mostly actually completely probably forgot that exists. And if your summoner's HP is full, this skill will increase your mana by 1. This means that this skill, when used, you obviously don't use it as a soul link, so even if someone's attack buff is on like 3 mana, Bastet is gonna be better because you use her off soul link. You start spamming your Tiana, right? And by the time Bastet uses her skill, you'll simply get 1 extra mana, which increases your speed by a lot, right? Now, another tip I have for cleave players, I'm not sure if this applies to some of the other summoners, I don't quite recall their active skills, but if you want to dash towards the boss even faster, you can, at the beginning of the game, switch to the light cleave, because if you compare movement speed with the movement speed buff, and you add up to this, look at this, boom, boom, 2 instant dashes, since you don't really need the first skill for the boss, that will cut you another few milliseconds from your run, right? Now, I'll explain how I rush the boss the moment you start, right? So what you want to do is, the second you enter the run, you want to use your dash and buff movement speed instantly. And the reason you do that is because it's so perfectly timed that by the time you use all 3 dashes and you move towards the boss with the movement speed buff, you'll have your dash right away. And I just forgot to switch to the Tiana. You will be able to use a 4th dash and dash to the boss a little bit faster, right? So that again costs like half a second from your runtime. Now I do want to say that if you want to go for those super fast high scores, there will be some RNG involved. I'm not sure whether this is the case for units like Eleonora, but if you're using Tiana, right? Like if you're using high scores and you want to use the what's it called, the Water Fairy, it's gonna be worse than Tiana and Eleonora, unfortunately. Eleonora is probably the best one, Tiana is gonna be the second best, and Water Fairy, just because, like, yes, she gets 1 mana back with her artifact, but the skill costs 5, and you wanna use her skill as soon as you have 4 mana with other units, so yeah, Tiana is just gonna be a little bit better there. There is some RNG involved, so first of all, the first RNG will be the ultimate gauge, I'll showcase the passive soon. Second RNG will be this 50% chance to increase mana by 1. Some games you will get like 1 or 2 mana increases, in some games you will get like 4 or 5 of them, right? So in the ideal scenario, you want to charge your ultimate in 3 second skills, right? So that of course needs a little bit of RNG from skills, because let me just quickly find out where the skill is. Yeah, so it's this one. Every summoner has this. Obtain a double ultimate gauge with a 50% chance when the soul link monster uses a skill. So you need to proc 2 lucky procs out of the 3 in order to get your ultimate in 3 hits, right? So there will be a little bit of RNG, and if you're speedrunning, if you notice that you don't get your ultimate in 3 second skill usages, you can restart the run because you will simply not get a high score. You must get your ultimate in 3 usages, both ultimates that you use, right? So that's a little bit of RNG. And one last tip I want to give for maximizing even more is, of course, it's a little bit not worth getting it anymore, but if you do have the ability from before, use your moonset, because the moonset actually has a passive of increasing mana regen speed by 5. This part works in everywhere, not just arena and battlefield, because as you can see, the arena and battlefield ones are for the decrease in summoner damage and monster damage though, right? For the mana regen, it works everywhere, so it will not be a lot like throughout the duration, it will be, from what I calculated, like 1 mana if you're doing like half a minute runs. But it does help a bit since you're fighting very tight conditions where you need every bit of mana that you can get. So make sure to run the seal set. Doesn't matter what stats you got on that, most of the damage comes from brandia, very little comes from your summoner. So yeah, some of the damage will not matter most of the time, even if you succeed during the ultimate, as long as the brandia's ultimate drops, you should be good, right? And yeah, that's about it. That's how I got the super fast runs, and that's how you can get consistent like 30 to 40 second runs. Just to prove it, I will do a test run with my regular team, and we'll just see how I do, right? Just completely random run, no RNG, min-maxing, nothing like that, just to showcase how it works, right? So do the moves and speed, do that, final dash, start with dots. I found that dots, oh, I actually will have one more tip that I'll showcase you. I'm actually lagging. Not the moment, Comters. It's not the moment to do that. Sure. Like, what is that? Why am I lagging so bad? I swear this is not scripted, not scripted. There we go, one ultimate. That did like good 30%, right? Also make sure when using Tiana ultimates or Tiana second skill, you actually stand in the green area that she does. Okay, so one more brandy ultimate and boom. As you can see, 3%, one more second skill, done. Yeah, super safe team. You also don't need to dodge like anything, which is perfect. 50 seconds while actually lagging for like 15 of those. As you can see, brandia, main damage dealer. Don't care about the summoner that much. Probably most of the damage actually comes from that single dot that he does. And yeah, one more skill. One more thing I want to mention. This mostly applies from my experience to Cleave. I don't know whether this will be very impactful for other summoners. I had trouble landing the second dot during the second ultimate phase, where like my ultimate would come up faster than my second skill, and I wouldn't be able to ult with brandia because there was no dot. So what I did for that is I actually reset my account levels and I upgraded 2 of the skills. This one to decreasing summoner's cooldown by 5, and this one to decrease by another 2.5. Since you don't really need summoner damage, as long as your monster offensive skills are maxed and you have those cooldown reductions, you should be able to get your second skill from the Wind Cleave in time for the second ultimate, right? Yeah, that's about it. We got that rank 1, yeah. We're gonna finish the video by flexing that, because I know I'll be overtaken like a day. Yeah, peace.